Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Food, Wine, and Whiskey in Your Own Backyard. I'm Rob, your host, and today, man, I have a guest on the show. It's going to be a fun conversation. Like me, this guy is into cooking, he's into wine. I think he dabbles a little bit in whiskey, we'll find out. But excited to have him on the show. He's a guy who has a YouTube channel all about cooking. I'll let him kind of tell you what that's about. He's been into wine for a very long time. I found him on YouTube, thought he was a really interesting guy, really liked what he was doing with some of the wine things he was doing, thought it would really be cool to reach out and see if we couldn't have a conversation, and he was very kind and was willing to come on and talk to us a little bit, so I thought it would be cool for the listeners to get a chance to know who this gentleman is as well. So welcome to the show. I'm going to call you the Wisconsin Wine Guy, but AKA Schel Kidd. How you doing, man?
Hey, I'm doing great. I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Not too bad, not too bad. You know, it's Texas weather down here, so it's been, nice weather, then really hot, then nice weather, and then this weekend we're being told we're going to get this tropical storm come through with all kinds of winds and all kinds of rain, and get your boats ready, all that kind of stuff. So it should be fun.
It's been a long time since I felt Texas sunshine. I wonder what that's like these days.
Man, you need to
hot or
You need to come down and find out. The sunshine's not the bad part for me being down here. I'm from the Midwest originally, but being down here for the number of years I have, and in Houston area for about 15 years, 16 years, it's that humidity. It's just heavy and thick and sticky, and that's the part that kind of makes it uncomfortable. The heat, I can deal with that.
Well, I hear tell, other than the oiliness that comes out of your skin, that moisture is good to help the skin breathe. So you got that advantage at least.
I do hear that. I know it's supposed to be good for you to, have your skin breathe like that. And I'll tell you, in the wintertime when I'm in a dry climate, I lived in El Paso for a while, my knuckles and things would crack in the summertime because it's just so hot and dry. In Houston, I don't have that problem. I don't have to put as much lotion on as I used to because I just don't get that problem. Get enough moisture in the air. So.
Well, I've always had this question. I know that, I ask you a question, I want to get to know about what's happening in your neck of the woods too. There's wines being made all over the world. So what's happening in Texas? What's the wine scene of locally made wine like in Texas?
Okay, I'm going to answer that question, but I'm going to kind of back at you just for a quick answer. Do you know anything about Texas wine? Have you investigated or heard anything, or do you have any kind of idea about Texas wine?
It's sporadic. There's a couple of people that I follow on social media, but it's very sporadic. I haven't really dived into it.
Let me tell you that Texas wine has blown up in the last probably, really blown up probably in the last 5 or 6 years, maybe a little bit longer than that. It's been around for, 25 years, probably 25 years, maybe longer than that, but where it's had some, a good presence here in the state. But I think Texas wine has really done a really good job in the last 5 to 7 years, maybe a little bit longer than that, of identifying who they are, what kind of climate we have here, and what kind of grapes they can grow here that will do well. I think in the beginning, everything was about Cabernet and Merlot and that Bordeaux blend with Petit Verdot and all of that. So I think a lot of people who wanted to start growing wine in Texas wanted to make those types of wines, thinking that's what people wanted to buy. And of course, the climate here doesn't really favor those grapes for the conditions that those grapes need, the cooler climates and in the evenings and things like that. So now they've gotten into the Tempraneos, and they've gotten into a variety of whites that do well in this type of climate. They've done the Tannat and some of those, and they're really kind of figuring out who they are and who they should be for growing wine. So as far as the grapes themselves and what they're growing, they're doing a great job. Now, I will tell you, there's a place down here called Fredericksburg, and it's kind of become the wine capital. It is the wine capital of Texas. It's the wine capital, I would say, of kind of down the center of the United States. To me, if you live east of the Mississippi and you want to go to, air quotes here, wine country, coming to Fredericksburg is a great place to go. If you don't want to go all the way to California, if you're looking at, cost and things like that, as far as California versus Texas, and if you're looking at, kind of a all-encompass kind of trip where, you're right in the middle of hill country with the wine country there. And then you have, Austin an hour away where you can go see some cool stuff around the capital. We got lakes and fishing and things like that. You got all the rivers that you can go tubing down the rivers. And then you've got San Antonio an hour away, where if you want to go see the Alamo, you want to go hang out on the river walk, you want to see some cool stuff there, you can kind of make it a family type trip where you get to enjoy some great wine as well. So Texas has, to me, done a really good job of promoting themselves as a wine destination, but also starting to produce some really good wines.
Wow, that's has to be a trip to check out for myself, man.
Yeah, if you haven't been to Texas for wine, yeah, I'd love to have you come down, Schel, and we'll show you around.
Well, that is definitely a date coming down to Texas. I mean, I got some family down in Texas, down in Austin.
Oh, do you really?
So, yeah. I mean, some of my family on my mother's side, Texas and Oklahoma.
Okay.
So I go way back in visiting Texas, but there was no real wine scene to speak of like it is now.
Yeah, it's grown, and I'll tell you that. It's funny that Fredericksburg is kind of the hub for, where the wineries are, the tastings, things like that. But a lot of the fruit is actually grown what they call the High Plains area over more towards West Texas, getting over to Lubbock and those areas where they have the hot days and the cool nights and that more of a desert type of climate. The grapes do a lot better over there. So certain grapes do a lot better over there. But
so are they doing Cabernets, or are they doing hybrid grapes? Or a little bit of both?
They're doing some Cabs. They're doing some Merlots. They're trying to make, a lot of a Texas Blanc is what some producers make for their white. It's a play on a Sauvignon Blanc.
Okay.
So, but they're also finding what grapes in this climate do well. And when you look at, some of the Mediterranean type grapes and things that have that high heat and can do well in the heat, that's where you start seeing the Tempranillo and things like that. And they make some fantastic Tempranillos. They really do. There's several, like anywhere, it's a new and up and coming region for wine, I think. And when you have that kind of that explosion onto the wine scene, you get a lot of people. You get some people, I don't want to say a lot, but you get some people that when you go up and down the wine strip, for the most part, if you're in Napa and you're going up and down 29 or you're going up and down the Silverado Trail, anywhere you stop, for the most part, it's going to be pretty good wine, right? It's Napa Valley. That doesn't apply here yet, because you have people who are taking advantage of this is becoming popular. Let's just pop up, put something in a bottle, and let's take advantage of being able to, kind of cash in, if you will, if that makes sense.
I think that kind of happens everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, even in California. I mean, being a California native myself, I watched that change over the years, and California wine, came out with this high quality, living off the reputation of the French in California wine contest, and then the popularity growing, and then everybody just putting out wines, and now the quality. I think the quality of California wines is slowly making a comeback. Where it's not just stuck in the high tier.
Right.
You find quality wines at different tiers now. I see that happening, but that happens everywhere. I think about myself many years ago and following the wine trail, just trying to find out where's wine being made, because a customer of mine when I have my shop asked me, so is wine made over the United States? And I said, well, yes. It made me think about when I was living in Utah. And I said, well, I wonder if they're making wine in Utah. And I couldn't believe it, in Utah, in Moab, Utah. they're making wine. There's a winery in Moab, Utah. So it just goes to show that there's wine all over these United States.
Yeah.
And I look forward to finding. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I read an article a couple weeks ago that every state in the United States now is making wine. And I can't remember if that was continental United States or if that included Alaska and Hawaii, but I'm kind of thinking it included it didn't include Alaska and Hawaii, but I can't remember for sure. But most states are making their own wine now. And I'm from Missouri originally from Missouri, and I can remember 25 years ago when we would go back from Texas with my wife to Missouri, and we had a lot of wineries along the Missouri and Mississippi River that had popped up, and to me, I was like, yeah, okay, I guess it's not going to be very good, but here we are all these years later, and I don't know how they're doing in Missouri, but to your point, wine's everywhere. People are making wine everywhere.
Well, they are making wine and growing grapevines in Hawaii. That I know. Alaska, I'm
Okay.
with you. I'm not so sure in Alaska. You know, it's funny when you talk about the Midwest. I mean, being here to the Midwest, because they migrating here to the Midwest, from the West Coast. I had that same idea, coming to the Midwest
Well,
and trying wine.
let's tell people a little bit about you and your story as far as, like I said in the introduction, I kind of came across you watching some of your wine reviews on YouTube and thought you were just a cool guy, man. I was like, okay, I like this guy. And you do your reviews on wines that are accessible. And I don't need to say it. I'll let you say it. But kind of tell people who you are. They hear a Wisconsin wine guy and they go, Wisconsin? Why Wisconsin? So kind of give them your story, your background a little bit.
All right. Well, I'm gonna start from Wisconsin wine guy and go backwards and come forward again.
Okay.
Well, the Wisconsin wine guy evolved out of myself coming to Wisconsin and discovering a wine scene. So this was like over 20 years ago that I came to Wisconsin. I said I'm only going to stay 2 years, and it turned into over 20 years now that I'm here because I saw potential. Just like everyone else going to the area, you wanted to explore the wine scene. So I explored the wine scene here and discovered that, oh my God, the wine was just okay. I sampled like a Syrah, a Cab, et cetera, and some local things that it was just okay. But I didn't see any vine. So this winery I went to introduced me to another winery where they were actually growing wine, growing grapevine. That was over 20 years ago. And at that time, there was less than 30 wineries in Wisconsin. So for me, I saw the advantage to get involved in this industry and self-titled myself the Wisconsin Wine Guy to reintroduce the local Wisconsinites to the wineries, to wines and wineries in this area, and also introduce the rest of the world to what's happening here in Wisconsin. So that's how Wisconsin Wine Guy came about. Just a guy in Wisconsin enjoying the local wines. Now, going back, again, I was a chef by trade. Well, I should start. I was an accountant by trade who went into cooking. Started out cooking with my family in the catering business. Dumped that, did the accounting. Got back into cooking, so I'm a retired chef. But my wine exposure came over 25 years ago. Belonging to this wine and beer supply shop, which this was in California, and we had members with this store, with the shop, that they had small vineyards in the valley of California. And so what we would do every year is do a harvest to attract new members, new people to the store, do a harvest, in these individuals' backyards, like 25 to 50 vines, bring it back to the shop and make wine, teach people how to make wine. So that was my introduction, like a true introduction to wine, nitty gritty. Of course, like always, everyone else, I drank, wine. My first wine was a sweet wine, and in fact, it was a malt duck. If you know what that is.
I don't.
You don't know what that is?
I don't.
It's funny when you travel. It's funny when you travel to the United States and you start talking about brands of wine. The old school wine. Like I never heard of what is it? Not Mad Dog 2020. It's another
Thunderbird.
Old school,
Thunderbird.
I heard of Thunderbird.
Okay.
It's another one. If I think about it, the conversation I do. But it's amazing how you find all these different wines that are out there in the world. Everyone knows Franzia, so I used to drink that, back in the day. But yeah, I come through life, as a chef, traveled, the globe, tasting wines, and didn't really take it all that serious at the time. But it wasn't until I came to open up my wine shop, here in Wisconsin. Several years later, I came to Wisconsin, opened a wine shop after about 8 years here. And that's when I really started teaching people about wine. And that's when it really became interesting to me. Because there was a lot to learn, and a lot of interesting things, and in fact, I tell people, I never liked history when I was in school. I doubt if a lot of people do, but food and wine has helped me enjoy history because they're all so connected. Every time a place was conquered or something was developed, or colonized, they brought their own food, their own spices, and added it to the area in addition to making wine. I mean, so that was a great thing.
That's a great point.
But,
You're exactly
but,
right. It's how California wines got started, right?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
In fact, there's a California-Wisconsin connection. You know, we have a winery here in Wisconsin called Wollersheim Winery, opened in 1972. Now, this winery is the original location that Augustus Horace, you ever heard that name?
Say it again.
Augustus Horace.
I don't know that name. Okay.
He's Hungarian. Well, have you heard this name? Buena Vista.
Oh, sure.
Okay. So
Sonoma.
Augustus.
Yeah.
Yeah, Augustus, before he started and created to help create the wine industry in California and that established that winery Buena Vista, his first stop was in Wisconsin and tried to grow those varietals here. But back then, in the 1800s, we had serious snow. I mean, the snow would be, cover your entire house. It was so deep. But the classic varietals didn't survive here. So eventually, he made his way out west. And over time, planted the grapes and began the Buena Vista Winery in the short, review. So there's a connection between Wisconsin and California. Now, that location, that land that he originally owned, is now owned, not now owned, but owned since in the 70s by Wollersheim family, Wollersheim Winery, and they had wines planted there since the 70s.
But
growing Foch.
That makes you ask the question, when you talk about the weather in Wisconsin, any of those northern states, what are the varietals? I told you a little bit about Texas and what we deal with our weather here, the heat and everything. What are varietals in Wisconsin that are planted on a regular basis that do well?
Well, the varietals that are grown here, people don't like to use this term a lot, but it's a term that are more classically known as hybrid varietals. So these are clones or created vines that can do well in our area. We've now used the term throughout the Midwest as well called cool climate grapes. And these are grapes that can sustain our harsh and very, very cold winters. And some of those, Foch, Marshall Foch, which originally is a French grape, is grown here. We have a grape called La Crescent, the Frontenac family, Marquette, Deep Pearl, St. Pepin. These are all grapes that are created in either in Wisconsin by Louis Swinson or created in Minnesota.
Oh, wow.
Minnesota University. Yeah. So these are all grapes that are created here throughout the Midwest strictly for this area, but they're grown throughout. I even found some Foch grown and planted and wines made in Oregon. Can't remember the name of the winery, though, but these grapes are around, just they don't get a lot of publicity. But here, what I find here in Wisconsin, I planted some myself here, so I have a couple of digits here, for study to understand this industry. But the wines that are produced here in Wisconsin are more European in style because we are a cooler climate. So we are what, Italy and France, were once, when their climates were a lot cooler, since the whole climate change thing, but their climates were a lot cooler. So we're producing, wines with character, crisp, bright acidity in both whites and reds, but something that's also good to drink, on a daily basis.
I'm guessing
very simple food.
I'm guessing they have to be lower in alcohol just because the grapes, they don't hang on the vine as long. They're not, getting that sugar in them as much.
Well, we get enough sugar. I mean, again, like with grape growing everywhere, the seasons different. So we get wines with maybe some wines at about 22, 24 grapes, depending on what the year is. Sometimes we may have a wet harvest season and sometimes not. It really all depends. But alcohol levels seem to hover around no more than 13%.
That's what I would think. Okay. Because I think, when I think old world wine, France and Italy specifically, Spain's in there, but I'm bigger into France and Italy. I think about, a little bit above 12.5 to 13.5% on average is what you get. Where you think about Napa, I mean, if you're at 14.5, that's low. 15, 15.2, 15.4. It doesn't surprise you if you see that in a wine.
Yeah. And I like to call that the sweet spot when drinking wine. Of course, we all had our times, and some were still in those times. I had my time of drinking, big, huge bold red, 14. Remember the explosion of, the 15, 16% Zinfandel out of California?
Oh, sure.
Remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I had those days, but now it's like, I stay within that sweet spot at 13%. Every now and then I may break out something bold, but that works great for me, in finding good wines, character, in addition to finding, good wines that I can just drink on a regular basis. Sweet spot.
Yeah. Well, one thing, Schel, I liked about you and kind of discovering you was, the things we have in common. You like to cook and you love wine. I love to cook and I love wine. But you do two different shows on YouTube. One is Cooking in the Raw, which is your cooking show, and the other is obviously your Wisconsin Wine Guy wine reviews. Let's talk about your wine reviews. How did this, what made you develop the show? What made you kind of stick in that little, you're in a specific kind of wheelhouse for what you're doing for people as far as what kind of wines you review? Tell people what you're doing.
Well, that came out of when I had a wine shop, in the early 2000s. And back then, people were still under the idea that in order to get a good bottle of wine, you need to spend like $40 or more. And especially in the area where I was, there was only one very popular wine shop I could think of at that time in another city. And then there was in Kohler, Wisconsin, where I am. They had their store, which they sold wines. But all the wines were high priced. Everything else was, grocery market brand. So after opening my shop, and doing some different kind of research and hand-picking my wines, I did a thing called, my idea was good wines between $10 and $15. I mean, in fact, they weren't really doing it in the mainstream magazines yet, trying to really hit that sweet spot. You do Best Buys. They weren't really putting the emphasis on that. So I started doing that. And again, selecting wines that you couldn't find anyplace else, as what most stores try to do. We try to get wines that no one else is selling. And when I closed the store, I wanted to continue with that somehow. As I spent some time thinking about it, and having had spent so many years, like 6.5 years of introducing people to unique wines, when I began to discover, I kept receiving the same question over and over again, even after the store closed. What's a good wine? How could you tell a good wine from a bad wine? And you really can't tell from reading the label if it's going to be a good wine or not. In fact, if you start reading labels these days, Rob, a lot of labels are beginning to sound the same. Not describing the wine.
Not only do they sound the same, I think, marketing, the label when it comes to marketing and enticing consumers to buy is huge. If we can make a cool or pretty or whatever kind of label that catches your eye, a lot of people buy wine based on the label, right?
Yeah, exactly. I have that happen a lot too. Even when I have my store, it's so funny. I like this wine, it has a good label. I was fortunate enough that they liked the wine too as well.
Exactly.
So they came back. So what I did was, I like to tell myself I had to get off of my high horse, get off my shoebox. I had to break it down because these grocery store brands are here to stay, and they constantly keep coming out. And in fact, some of the wines that I sold that were quote-unquote exclusive to my store in my area, those wineries have a new label on those wines. So the wines are still there, just under a different label now. It's so funny to watch that change. So I said, you know what? I'm going to start going in the stores, and I did some test videos, but I haven't even posted yet. And my original concept was sips, tips, and snacks. I still didn't want to let go of the food aspect of it. So it's sips, tips, and snacks. And no one really got to see those because it wasn't exciting enough to me. I'll probably just post them later, just for throwbacks. But I happened to one day taste the wine, and I'm trying to remember what that wine was. Taste the wine. And I'm like, oh, my God, this is really good. And I just shared it online. And I got some response. It wasn't even a review. I just shared it online. I got some response for it. You know what? Maybe I should just, start talking about wine. Because no one else is really talking about just everyday wine. They're using the phrase everyday wine, but no one was really talking about everyday wine. And so I just started it, and it just took off from there. And I even discovered myself that wow, these are a lot of wines that I avoided. I truly avoided because they were market brands. And I started discovering, some hidden jewels myself with some of these wines. So yeah, that's how it started.
Yeah, I think it's great. And to your point, there's some really good wines that you can get between 10 and 20 bucks. I mean, to
Yeah,
me,
no, yes,
price of wine doesn't dictate quality of wine. I've had
no,
some
no,
expensive bottles that I go, yeah, not a fan, won't buy that again. And I've
yeah.
had some inexpensive bottles that I go, this is fantastic. I'm going to load up on these,
Yeah.
So,
I mean, it's a simple process that I do. Like thumbs up, halfway, a three-quarter thumb, halfway thumb, or thumbs down. Make it very, very simple. But the idea behind it also is that I'm just giving you my opinion. I try to always say that I'm giving you my opinion of wine. I want you to let your palate be the guide. I'm telling
exactly.
you what doesn't work for me. And I'm going to tell you why it doesn't work for me. Or if it does work for me, I'm going to tell you why it works for me. And most people who probably hear about my show, they probably think that, oh yeah, so he's probably reviewing all red wines or he's reviewing all dry wines. And no, I do a lot of reviews on sweet wines, and some of my sweet wines get a highly recommended thumbs up. So I'm not one way or the other way. I mean, I consider myself a wine drinker across the board. I don't alienate.
No, and I'm with you on that, Shell. I love. I mean, obviously I started in Napa, and I think most people in the States start there when they decide that they're going to get into wine, and Napa makes
Mhm,
some fantastic wines.
mhm,
But once I dove in deep and started exploring the world of wine, and learning that there's wines from all over the world, it intrigued me. Maybe that isn't true for all people, but for me, it intrigued me so much that I was like, man, I want to go kind of explore all these different places and see what's out there and how wine can be different in all these different parts of the world and different cultures who make it different way and different varietals and all those things. So that's one of the biggest joys for me about wine is that exploration of wine. It's never ending, right? We're never going to go through in our lifetime
never,
everything that's
never.
that's out there to explore and try. So it's really that to me is the cool part about wine. It's never ending.
But I also try to, deviate or move people away from the commercialization of wine. You know,
Right.
um, don't fall for the marketing things. I mean, I tell you, back when I have my shop, you know, Spanish wine. We're talking 2005, 2006. Spanish wine wasn't even popular back then. Not at
Right.
all.
Right.
South African wine, they were phenomenal. I mean, you have some, just like in every winery, every wine area, you have some good wines and bad wines.
Sure.
But people weren't even talking about South African wine. Wines from Hungary, other than Tokai, the sweet, the expensive sweet dessert wine, but they have some good wines in Hungary as well. And here's something else. Everyone knows Riesling. Everyone knows Riesling. But no one was really aware of the wines made from red grapes like Pinot Noir. And they call it Spätburgunder. No one was aware of that. Or Sekt, Sekt, which is the German equivalent of a sparkling wine.
Right.
No one really knew about those things because marketing had kept you focused and honed in on a specific group of wines and/or area. Like the Washington area, the Oregon area, they were just up and coming back then.
Yeah.
Australia, all these places were up and coming back then. And so I would try to select some wines. Again, always selecting wines that no one purchased before, no one is selling in their stores, and see if my picks would ever show up in the magazines, mainstream magazines. It was always surprised if it did. I remember picking out, the Yalumba, the Viognier, back when Viognier first hit the scene, and it was all kind of people just going down. Oh, I don't like Viognier. It's this, it's that. But I found Viognier got a good one. It was delicious.
Sure.
The Yalumba Viognier hit 90 points in Wine Spectator. Maybe the second year after I already had purchased it from my store, selling it for $15 a bottle.
Pine Ridge out of Napa makes a good Viognier. and
Yes.
we get it around here for $12 a bottle.
I mean, so I have a philosophy, as I said earlier in the conversation, I mean, it wasn't until I began teaching people about wine that I really began to understand wine myself, and not doing traditional teaching as well. Of course, you do how to taste, but my whole thing is, like I said, letting people make discoveries themselves. Don't follow my palate, but let me put the items in front of you, and then let's have a conversation over wine. You don't have to follow my lead. I want to follow your lead. I mean, in fact, when I do a wine and food pairing uh, class, it works like this. I create a couple of dishes, and we pair it with, maybe 2 to 3 wines. Same wines with each dish, same wine. But the goal, because I do it intentionally, the goal is to find what doesn't go together. I don't want you to come to my wine and food pairing and I put together this perfect pairing, and because my perfect pairing may not work for you. So I'm not going to do that. But then you'll go home thinking, oh my God, you must have, remember the whole white wine with fish and seafood, red wine with red meat? Remember that whole thing?
Sure.
I don't want to send people home staying within those boundaries. All right? That's why I created a thing that said, I want you to find what doesn't go together. Because when we find what doesn't go together, now let's talk about it. And now I have set in front of you, have sugar, salt, spice, and lemon juice. Let's take these elements and add it to the food to help you make it come together with the wine. People gain a much better understanding that way. Now they understand how acid's going to play if it's too much acid in your food with wine, how salt's going to play in your wine. I was at a wine dinner myself once, private dinner, and the host accidentally overcharred the buffalo meat steaks. The innocent thing had happened. So I had a Malbec. I was presented the wine for this tasting. So I'm like, oh my God, it's gonna make the wine taste horrible. I already knew that. Quick, Schel, what can you do? Salt. Salt took care of all of that. The salt, the char, with the depth of the Malbec and the smokiness of the Malbec was great. So I had people taste it before we add salt, and now taste it after we add salt to it, so they can understand. So that's what I do. I try to get people to understand, more so than just giving them a plate of food and a couple bottles of wine, and say, well, because of this and that food, I did this. Well, here's some lemon juice, here's some acid, add it to that dish and see what happens to your wine.
No, I like that. You give them options. You don't just do one entree with that wine. You say, here's 3 different types of entrees. What do you like? And I'm a big believer that there's no wrong answer when it comes to wine or whiskey. You like what you like. Nobody can tell you shouldn't like something. If you like a bottle of wine, like it. That's your right. I'm not going to tell you any different.
I live behind this philosophy as well. There's a wine for every palate and a palate for every wine. And that's something that I came up with being here in Wisconsin. Being known as, sweet wine state, which is untrue. We have a lot of sweet wines. We got a lot of dry wines too here. But we do literally have a wine for every palate. We really do. We have fruit wine, both dry and sweet. We have red wine and white wines made from locally grown grapes, both dry and sweet. We have the classic varietals, with grapes that are coming in from California, Oregon, Washington, here, made in the dry, full-body wine. We have mead grown here. So we have a wine for every palate.
Right.
In Wisconsin. We got it covered. And so for me, though, that's wine. I don't downplay wine. Again, this is me teaching. I don't downplay anyone's wine, no matter what the style. I go from this perspective. First, let's get to understand when it comes to grapes. Let's get to understand the different grapes. Okay? After grapes, now let's explore styles. There's a reason why a sweet wine drinker can't enjoy Cabernet. But first, you have to understand the difference between sweet sugar and ripe fruit. Most of them don't, because we grow up. What do we grow up? I tell people this story. I say, think about when you were a kid. I think when you had your own kids, you had your first wine lesson and didn't even know it. And also your first wine and food pairing and didn't even know it. I tell this a lot throughout my classes. I said, so you have this your young kid, and they get a taste of their first thing. What's the first thing you feed them? You feed them that dry cereal. The Gerber baby cereal, just dry cereal. They're tasting it. It's like mush, like chalk. And the baby make those ugly faces. They just, oh, this is horrible. All right? So then you get smart one day because the kids have to eat, and you put bananas or peaches something in it. All right? So you made it a little bit sweeter. And then all of a sudden the kid is just like, oh my, just eating all their food, every day. And so what do you give them as a reward? Grape juice. First wine and food pair. But then that first introduction is also sweet sugar. So that's what we learned first. Sweet sugar.
No, I agree with you. I think most wine drinkers, when they start exploring, they're sweet wine drinkers first. Absolutely. And then they kind of evolve into exploring some of the other wines and the drier wines. And then you can come back to sweet because, there's a difference between an introductory sweet wine versus a quality sweet wine. Would you agree with me there?
Yeah. Oh, I would totally agree with you. I mean, and I lean more towards the quality side. I mean,
sure.
You have to balance. I compare it to lemonade. Some people, and I don't down anyone's preference. See, I come at a time in the industry, and growing up in the industry, where a person's wine preference, depending on what it was always downplayed. If you like sweet wines, it's downplayed. You like Moscato, you're downgraded. You like the Merlot, you're downgraded. I never wanted to do that to people. Let's help you understand the quality. One quality over the other. You can't drink one Moscato that you love, and then drink 3 different brands of Moscato from different areas, and say I don't like those. You still like Moscato. You just like that first style, which is sweeter. But still, no fizz, just sweet Moscato. The other range represents different styles. Again, first, let's understand the grape.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% because Muscat's a good one too. That grape, because you're right. Here in the States, it's thought to be very, very sweet. But if you go to Old World, it's a high quality grape that a lot of people use and make some really fine wines with it. It's a quality grape. But people have that perception because of here in the States, a Moscato, oh, that's just a really sweet, cheap, inexpensive wine to start with. And there's some truth to that, but that doesn't encompass the whole world of that particular varietal.
No. I mean, so I have a goal is to, my goal with this wine thing is to continue introducing palates to wine. I mean, that's always so much fun to me, is to continue introducing palates to wine, and helping shape their understanding. I mean, turn the volume off of marketing.
Right.
Marketing has a way, it's like, oh, I've never seen that bottle before. Maybe I should go check it out. But beyond that, let your palate guide you. That's what I try to tell people. Let your palate guide you. You bought the wine because of the label? That's great. That's your palate guide.
I want to mention something else when you talk about value wines, and that's kind of what you do on your show. Well, let's do this if you don't mind. I've got an episode of yours pulled up. Let's play a little bit of it. Let the audience know, kind of hear what you do on your show and what it's all about. Because I'd love for them to go check you out on YouTube and, follow you on Twitter. Are you on Instagram as well?
Yes, I am. Wisconsin Wine Guy.
Okay, and on Twitter you are?
Wisconsin Wine Guy.
Are you Wisconsin Wine Guy? Oh, I always, when I tag you, it's Vino Discoveries, at Vino Discoveries that's what I'm thinking.
You do Vino Discoveries or Wisconsin Wine Guy.
Pulls up both, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, here's a little bit of what you do with your show on YouTube, which is Wisconsin Wine Guy, and I love your grading system. We'll let them hear it here real quick.
Hello, it's your Wisconsin Wine Guy. In 2020, wine reviews are getting off to a fantastic start. I've been very well pleased with the wines that I've presented to you so far. And I'm just going to keep the momentum going, and let's see what we can come up with next. So very, very simple. I go through and select wines that you can find in your everyday liquor store, grocery store, and some wine shop shelves. Very simple system. Thumbs up. Highly recommended. 3/4. You know what? I would drink this wine as at a party or something. I may even keep a couple of bottles. Halfway, not so much for me, but maybe for someone. Let us all know. Give it a taste. Thumbs down. Get that wine out of here. Now, on today's show, we are going to go to California. And you know how I feel about having multiple bottles of wine from the same winery. It gives me a chance to see if there's consistency in the thumbprint or consistency in the way that that winemaker produced their wines. So now we're going to be doing rootstock or route stock. Okay, so we're going to have the Chardonnay and the Pinot Noir. So we got 2018 on the Chardonnay, 2017 on the Pinot Noir. You know, now these wines out of California called rootstock because the wines represent a route or a highway in California. Here's Highway 121 actually, and then this one's going to be Highway 116. These are leading you through Sonoma wine region and along the coast, you know, connecting with Highway 1 along the coast. So, wow, let's get into it and see what we can get here. So, what I found...
That's a little bit of your show in the intro, and then you get into the wines. I just think you do a great job with that. I really like the way you keep it simple. I'm a big fan of the KISS method, you know, keep it simple, stupid, and I think people can understand what you're doing. You're not trying to make it so technical that people can't kind of, you know, engage and understand what you're saying about the wines.
Well, I have to say, if it hadn't been for myself, if it hadn't been for owning a wine shop, you know, and dealing with customers from different walks of life and having to speak to them about the product that I'm selling, that helped me tone down I like to call the wine rhetoric. You know, there's no point in talking over someone's head. They just want to know simply, in more words than one, does it taste good or not?
Yeah.
You know,
That's what it boils down to, right?
Yeah, yeah. You know, and my job was always simply to, well, let's help you find your palate, whether it be sweet or dry, bubbles or not bubbles. Let's help you find your palate so that you know. You know, and I tell you another funny story with that. I mean, there's one client I had, Gewürztraminer. Never had a Gewürztraminer before. That's a wine grape. And so I gave them a recommendation for my shop. It was from South Africa, actually. And they loved it. The sweeter style, loved it. So they come to a wine tasting I was doing. You know, we were tasting through like 6 wines, you know, and about 25 people in the store were doing this wine tasting and going through. And the client, our customer, didn't like either one of the wines so far. So I turned to them and tried to get explanation of what was it about the wines they like. Because I want everyone to learn from everyone in the class. It's not putting you on the spot. Let everyone learn from everyone. And only to discover while she was talking, I noticed that she had gum in her mouth. So I said to her jokingly, "Are you chewing gum?" She says, "Yes." She said, "This is how I determine if a wine is good or not, if it tastes good with my gum." So every wine, in essence, every wine that she tasted that day was sour. And I like a juicy fruit gum or something, you know. So again, I tell that story because these are part of the real world wine drinkers, you know, and so they're not really understanding their palate in a sense. So it's trying to help them get to understand their palate. When you come across things like that, it's like, okay, that's going to make it difficult to help you find the wine. Now, to make that story real short, in the end, to come to my store like 2 weeks later to purchase some wine, I always had her wine sitting on the counter when she got there. So I set that, you know, South African Gewürztraminer on the counter when she walked in. She said, "No, I drink Sauvignon Blanc now." From New Zealand.
Wow.
She went from that sweet, because she got rid of the gum. Went from that sweet Gewürztraminer to a New Zealand style Sauvignon Blanc since she got rid of the gum.
Which
So
gave her a lot of that grass and, you know, all that, you know, that New Zealand type of Sauvignon Blanc.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, so that's what I like most about it, and that's why I make it my mission, is to help people discover wine, discover your wine palate. You know, don't let someone else tell you what it is. I mean, there's so many couples that come to the store and would come to my store, and one will look at the other in order to determine if this is good wine or not. And I would say, well, what do you think? What do you think of the wine? Do you like it? I like it. You know, but most times they wouldn't even purchase it because the other party didn't like it.
Right.
And then they would come in, and it turns out the person that would purchase wine based on the other individual, they became the regular shopper. They would always purchase wine from that day forward and bought what they wanted plus what the other person wanted. So it was amazing. So really working with everyday wine drinkers helped me tone down my presentation. Got rid of all the technical details. They're there if someone wants to know, but it's not necessary just to find a good glass of wine or a good bottle of wine.
Totally agree. Totally agree. Well, that's the part covering you with wine, which is fantastic. But then there's the other side of you that loves to cook, and you were a chef,
Yeah.
and you have another channel on YouTube called CITR, Cooking in the Raw. Tell us a little bit about that one as well. Tell us a little bit background with your love of food.
Well, I will tell you this: cooking it raw doesn't mean I'm cooking naked.
Sorry, ladies.
I get that one a lot. Naked?
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. But cooking it raw came out of when I was contemplating retiring from cooking. I thought to myself, so what I'm going to do? When I slowly began walking away from the kitchen, I still enjoyed cooking. I just didn't enjoy cooking professionally anymore. That was wearing on me. So I'm like, what am I going to do? So I believe it's like 2011, 2012. I met who was one of my good friends today. Kind of said, you ever thought about shooting videos? And I'm like, no, never thought about shooting videos. And so they said, you should probably shoot a video. Maybe you'll find a different outlet. But YouTube, this is like 2010, so YouTube was around for like 5-6 years, I want to say by then. And so I shot a video. I started a YouTube account. I shot a video, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do with it. So I thought I was going to do an instructional video in silence. So I shot that video, and years later I look back at it, it's just a funny video, and it kind of sucked. The dish was good. It was a roasted pepper tomato bisque. The dish was good, but I thought the video sucked when I look back at it now. But what it did for me was it created for me another outlet. I didn't have a name for the show. It was just a cooking show. It created me a different outlet. I came up with the name because most people think that I never say in the show that I was a chef. I'd never say that. Only those that know me know that I was a chef before. But most people don't realize that we have more misses and hits in the kitchen. You just don't get to see it. When you finally get your plate, it's perfect. But you don't get to see it. So I wanted to create a show that would kind of showcase that, that mistakes happen. I'm a civilian now. Mistakes happen in the kitchen, and mistakes happen. We have to correct it. We start all over again. And I started noticing there's a lot of people there's still a lot of people today who are afraid to cook. Believe it or not, they're afraid to cook, or to tell themselves that they can't cook, or someone has told them that they can't cook. So I took that show the direction of, this is a show for those who want to cook. I want to make it easy. I want to make it simple. I want to make it fun, and I want to do it off the cuff, not planned, just off the cuff. The first season of Cooking in the Raw, I did have edited videos. It was still cooked. It was like stop and start kind of editing. The second season, I went straight through. I said, if I'm going to have a name like Cooking in the Raw, it's got to be unedited. The unscripted part, the unrehearsed part was there, but the unedited part wasn't there. So the second season, I just went straight through from beginning to end. And knock on wood, to this day, I still haven't had any true mishaps on the show. I think maybe one show I probably had a really bad smoking pot. but that so far so good, on that. So that's what it's about. I found my outlet, as a civilian, and I just wanted to share. So all of my platforms, I'll share dishes, that I prepared. I have a playlist called video shorts, which is like quick, easy, simple things, or maybe even simple step-by-step things, stuff like how to peel an avocado or something,
Well, you made one just how to make good French fries.
Yeah, French fries, yeah. Oh, and that's a funny one, because believe it or not, that is the most popular video on cooking in raw. Skinny fried.
Really?
Just deep fried in a pot on the stove. Yeah, I mean, I've done so many things, filleting of beef, cooking this, cooking that, making a gallon, all kind of crazy things I've done, from I've learned over the years. But skinny fries or thin French fries, the most popular video. And, when you listen to your audience, you begin to change. So I started changing and making dishes simpler. I thought people wanted, to learn, complex things that you do in restaurants, but that's not everyday cooking for some people.
Right.
I kind of changed after that. After that becoming the most popular video, it was a quick changeover.
Well, let me ask you this. Let me start by saying, for me, I've always, not always, it took me till I got into my early 30s. When I was younger, I was a big, picky eater. I mean, I was picky. My wife can laugh and tell you some stories about how picky I was. I evolved, and now I like everything. There's not much I don't like other than, fresh onions. I like grilled onions, just for whatever reason, still don't like fresh onions. But for me, I used to be that backyard chef, loved to grill. That was the guy, right? Out on the barbecue pit or on the grill or whatever. But it was really the Food Network, 20 years ago, that started having those chefs on, celebrity chefs. And for me, the biggest one that influenced me was Guy Fieri. I can remember watching Guy's Big Bite, and he's had several different shows. And I would see his things, and you can go to thefoodnetwork.com and get the recipe. And I would start trying to cook those things in the kitchen, which kind of started fueling me to really enjoy cooking. Do you have somebody who influenced you? I mean, obviously you came from that world, but chefs still have other chefs that they looked up to and tried to like their style or their type of cuisine or just techniques or anything like that.
Well, influence in the real world would have to be Wolfgang Puck.
Okay.
I was around during the first Spago in Hollywood. So Wolfgang Puck had always been my inspiration. In the television world, what helped inspire cooking in raw would be Mario Batali. He was one of those few chefs that would start and finish a dish live from beginning to end. That included making pasta. He would shoot from beginning to end. He just had little commercial breaks, but he would pick up where he left off on that dish. So those two have to be my most inspirational chefs, over the years.
You know what I remember about Mario that I always liked about him? He was just kind of that down-to-earth, humble guy. You can get that from his personality, but you also figured that out by watching him on TV. And what I mean by watching him is he wore shorts and Crocs on TV to cook what he was cooking. I mean, he was just he just love of cooking, man. He didn't need to be looking all fancy and chef and big hat. He just, hey, I'm going to get in the kitchen and put some stuff out, and it's going to be fun.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. He was a world-class chef, Italian chef, but cooked like he was just in his home kitchen.
Yeah, that's how he was, and I remember that about him. The other guy that had a little, that I enjoyed watching, I think he was probably the first. You can tell me if I'm wrong, but I remember him as the first big star on Food Network before Guy Fieri and Bobby Flay and all those guys, was Emeril Lagasse with the bam, when he would do all his dishes and things from that kind of New Orleans Cajun style cooking, a lot of it.
That's a tough one. I think he'll be in the top 5 as some of those first.
Yeah.
For some reason, a couple of female names, come around in there. But yeah, Emeril Lagasse, he was around in the beginning. I don't know if he was the first, but he was definitely around in the beginning.
Yeah, he was in the beginning. He was before Bobby Flay and those guys.
Yeah. I think what really got me into, even before the Food Network, part of what got me into TV cooking would be, I just jumped out of my head. It's that show where it was a Japanese show, Iron Chef.
Oh yeah, Iron Chef.
Iron Chef. The original Iron Chef, where you had subtitles to watch.
Thought it was fantastic. I loved that show.
Yeah. Then Chef, American style, basically.
Yep.
But yeah, the original Iron Chef, I used to watch that show a lot because I found that amazing. In fact, when I think about cooking in raw, if I had to be completely honest, it would go back to Iron Chef, where they would just go in the refrigerator and
Yeah,
make these dishes. Like, here's the
they
ingredient.
they didn't know what the main ingredient was until it was unveiled, and then now make 7 dishes or 5 dishes with this one ingredient. Using it in different ways. Really cool show.
Now, I didn't go to culinary school. I'm the school of hard knocks.
Nothing wrong with that.
That was like, nothing wrong with that. But I know that in culinary school, that's part of your test. Is a mystery box. Because you have a mystery box of ingredients, you got to create a couple of dishes and get it graded, by the chef instructors.
So I wonder if that's what helped develop the show Chopped. Because it's another show I like. A basket of ingredients that have to be in the dish. Each round a appetizer, entree, then a dessert. It's a great show. Fun to watch them be creative.
I enjoy Chopped.
Yeah.
So I don't miss cooking in the kitchen at all. The only thing I miss the camaraderie. I miss the friendship that you make in the kitchen, because I would say 75% of your time is spent with your coworkers, if not more.
Sure. I cook here a lot at the house, and I love to have people come over and eat what I make. And I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but I've had a lot of people go, man, you need to, open up a little shop. But you need to open up a little shop and, have a little restaurant or something. And I'm like, nah, man, that then cooking can go from being fun to maybe not being so much fun. And I don't want that to happen. I love being able to cook for, a meal for a few friends, sit down, enjoy some wine, enjoy some conversation and company. That's what I love about food. I don't want to get into, having to cook for 50 tables, turning them twice over the course of an evening, multiple times a week. That just, to me, is too much work. I want to have fun and enjoy food.
I feel now that as a civilian cook, I don't even call myself chef anymore. As a civilian cook, I feel I am at my most creative now.
Yeah.
I'm not confined by whether the general public like it or not. Now I can just create.
Sure.
And to perfect something. And so that's what I enjoy now. And I still have misses. But I get those hits that was like, woo, that was a good one.
Oh, yeah. I have a certain group of friends that they know they're my guineas, Like last week I made a paella on Sunday, and I'd not made a paella before. So I was like, okay, let me invite some friends over and tell them you're my guinea pigs for this, and let's see if it's edible. And, luckily it came out really good, but it's always fun to try to explore and cook some new things, try some new dishes.
And that's something you miss out on at some point, in the kitchen. At some point, you get older and it truly becomes a business,
Yeah.
to do that. Everything has to be, down to the detail. And there's some things you just won't do anymore, because that's not your concept. Where at home, I remember when I was younger, when I guided my career, I would work for a place, depending on what it was, 6 months or 2 years to move on to something else. What I would do though is I would work in a different aspect of the kitchen detail. Like I may, be a saucier, at this place. Or I go someplace else and I may do baking. I go someplace else, I may do pastries, et cetera. Go down the line. I would do something different. But then at some point, when you acquire all these skills, at some point you find yourself trapped into a restaurant concept. Yes, you have all those different things, but you don't have that flexibility anymore. Because it's about the profit.
Right, right.
Now I'm a civilian, I was leading to that. I used to bake a lot when I was younger. A lot I used to bake. I had this, in one of my places I lived in California, had this pantry that I didn't use for pantry items. It had 5 shelves in it, and each of those shelves, I put thermometers in there. Each of those shelves had a different temperature, and that's where I would put my bread dry at different levels, and all my different baked goods. So I created like a little bakery in my kitchen. I used to bake all the time. When I would travel to France or Italy, I would come home and try all these baked things or pastries, do it at home. So now I'm a civilian. I'm baking again.
That's good, man.
I hadn't baked in a lot of years when I was working. But now I'm baking again. I'm making things or creating things that I had moved away from. I have like notebooks upon notebooks of recipes, that I've created that I hadn't looked at in years. And I'm going back and looking at those recipes, like, wow, that was pretty good.
That's awesome.
I'm even afraid of some of my own recipes, because what happens is you lose, especially with baking. If you don't continue baking, you lose that touch, those senses of what a dough should feel like or what a batter should look like. You lose those, and so you depend on that recipe. But it's like the fear comes to me, like, I don't know if that looks right. It kind of looks right, but I don't know until I actually bake it.
Right.
It's been like 15 years since I've seen that recipe.
That's exactly. Yeah. Well, man, I appreciate you coming on the show, Schel. This has been a lot of fun, good conversation. I thought it would be great to have you on and have. Well, I do want to say while I have you, I appreciate you. I have that Facebook group called Food, Wine, and Whiskey in Your Own Backyard, same name. And you joining, man. That's the whole goal of the group, is to kind of spread it out around the country and see what people are cooking at home in their own backyards, but also where they go eat, what kind of restaurants and cuisine and local places people are eating around the country. And eventually I'd like it to be a place where, people travel. They can get on there and ask, if I'm going to this part of Virginia, what's a great place to eat? And there's these little shops, because I'm all about supporting local, mom and pop type places. We all know the big chains that are everywhere, but it's when you go to these different parts of the country and you can find, the locally owned places, whether it's a burger place, a pizza place, whatever kind of food it might be. But to me, supporting those places is important in our communities, but it's also where I think you get some of the best food.
I like your concept, because it encompasses everything. You find most groups, it's like, it focuses on one thing, one aspect. The other thing goes across the board, and I like that.
Well, I appreciate it.
I believe it to be a good place of inspiration, for a lot of, up and coming beverage drinkers and cooks.
Yeah, absolutely.
Across the board, and there's a lot you can learn from there. You never know who's inside that group, who will be going live inside that group doing something.
Yeah, is that a hint?
So that's a hint. That's right, it's a hint. I'm looking to have fun. As a civilian, I can have fun now.
That's exactly right. But I do. I appreciate you joining the group and coming in and making some posts already. That very nice of you to do that. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much for having me on the show. And again, if you guys want to continue following me, that's on YouTube, Wisconsin Wine Guy, Instagram, Wisconsin Wine Guy, Twitter, Discoveries, or Wisconsin Wine Guy. You'll find me there, posting things about wine, posting things about food, and just having fun. So come enjoy the party, I like to say. It's party till I drop now.
That's what it's about, right? That's exactly what it's about. So, well, Schel, thanks for coming on the show, man. Really appreciate it. Great conversation. I hope we stay connected and can cook up a couple more times, just find out what's going on with each other. But really appreciate you taking the time today.
I'll be sure to post a photograph of those pierogies inside the group.
Definitely do that. I want to see those, man. I've never made those, so now you've got me intrigued. So looking forward to that. Hey, I want to thank everyone for listening to this episode of Food, Wine, and Whiskey in Your Own Backyard. And until our next episode, enjoy your next pour.